Good morning, everybody. Good afternoon to those in India and everywhere else you are in the world. Thank you so much for joining us on our Circular Khadi presentation. As the strapline suggests, we are from waste to weave. We're trying to bridge circular economy and bring together with heritage textile systems. For this first pilot project, we have been funded from the British Council, which was part of the New Landscapes grant from the UAL FTTI. Moving on, Ashna. Sorry, Ashna's in charge of the slides. So we've had 4 partners in this project. Where does it come from, which I'm representing, and where does it come from? We advocate for ethical, traceable clothing and textiles, working with artisan communities and very much promoting fair trade and transparency through allowing customers to connect with the product stories. Khamir Crafts, we have Gatit here from Khamir Crafts. They support the preservation, revitalisation and innovation of traditional crafts in the Kutch region of India by fostering artisan-led production and facilitating capacity building and community empowerment. And they've been our craft partner. Conserve India, we have several of the team here, but Kanika is going to be presenting. They transform waste materials into high quality products while empowering marginalized communities through sustainable livelihood opportunities and innovative recycling practices, and they're based in Delhi. And Khadi London is a knowledge hub in regenerative textiles, supporting artisan communities, facilitating collaborations and advocating responsible fashion and textiles through consultancy, research, events and education. And Ashna and myself and lots of other team members are here from Khadi London. Just to give you a outline of, am I doing the R&D outline? I am, aren't I? Yes. The R&D outline, an outline of what we were actually planning with this project, what we were trying to do. So Circular Khadi is to integrate circular economy principles into the heritage textile sector. So we see it as an intersection between heritage and tradition and really modern practices and methods of circularity. We're exploring innovative ways of reducing waste, working with Conserve India, and then taking natural fibre textiles and repurposing them into new high quality textiles using traditional processes. So by merging traditional techniques with small scale machinery, we not only reduce environmental impact, but we can also create new economic opportunities for the rural artisans and communities at the same time as preserving traditional craftsmanship. Next slide. The holistic aims of the project are addressing the textile waste, obviously a key one. So we're intersecting the circularity, innovation and heritage, tackling that challenge of textile waste. In this particular pilot, working with one craft cluster in Kutch and Gujarat, with the aim of being replicable across lots of different contexts. That could be geographies and fibres, generating livelihoods, creating more opportunities for rural opportunities, while supporting responsible practices, local economies, and again, preserving those traditional crafts and skills. We've been looking at the creation of alternative circular fabrics so we can downstream them into the fashion and textile industry, making them available to designers and brands.
Sorry.
Designers and brands to demonstrate the possibilities for other textile systems, which we hope to take forward in the next stages of the project. And again, trying to work with those artisans and those people to create capacity building, to highlight that importance of traditional crafts and heritage skills.
Sorry, Joe, 1 second.
Is it coming back? Jolly good. I didn't want to start just going off on one, or who knows where we would go. Yeah, preserving the craft heritage, I've said, but being able to integrate that into a new circular system. And as we all know, craft heritage has its own circularity, its own waste saving opportunities built in, but by having a replicable model, using these skills, we can build these, we can downstream that across lots of different sectors. And of course, environmental conservation, as well as eliminating waste, which is obviously really key. We're focusing on natural fibres. We're avoiding additional uses of dyes by using the original colours of the fabrics that are being recycled, and minimizing carbon emissions through predominantly hand-powered processes, because obviously if you're using hand power to spin, to weave and to process, then you're avoiding those fossil fuel based machinery issues. Over to Kanika, who's handling these ones.
Thanks, Jo. We've had some very tangible aims that we've been looking to achieve with this project. First is, of course, developing a recycled hand-spun yarn and khadi fabric, a circular khadi fabric. As Jo mentioned, we're trying to create intersection of circularity, innovation, and heritage to tackle the challenge of textile waste. We worked with the craft cluster in Kutch, Gujarat, and the R&D of the fabric making took place at this cluster. And while the sorting and collection, the circularity aspects took place in Delhi. Conduct waste sorting and training guidelines. So sustaining and creating livelihoods are as part of Conserve India's and Khamir's communities and beyond, and including the waste collectors and sorters, spinners and weavers, including all of these marginalized communities to perform livelihoods and create opportunities for them in the evolving circular landscape. We also look to integrate small-scale recycling machinery with the heritage textile sector, the creation of alternative circular fabrics that can be downstreamed into the fashion and textile industry, and demonstrating recycling possibilities for other regional textile systems. We also conducted capacity building workshops for artisans and for sorters, highlighting the importance of traditional craft skills of hand spinning and hand weaving and integrating them for this evolving circular landscape. We also have a written report, documentation, and this as part of the dissemination event. And Circular Khadi also utilizes all these natural fibers, avoids additional dyes, and minimizes carbon emissions. With this project, we're looking to create this pilot industry that is altogether sustainable and inclusive. So the first step of the process was the collection of fabrics. The cluster in Kutch, Gujarat collected all of their production waste. We collected about 110 kilos of post-production handloom cotton waste. This included offcuts from in-house stitching unit, flawed fabrics from textile production, such as misprints or dye issues, and yarn waste from the dyeing and weaving process. The next step was of sorting. Sorting happened with the waste workers. We had a specialized team of 30 sorters who were trained in categorizing the waste by color, weight, and fiber type. We also developed a specific sorting guideline for this particular type of waste and how these textile wastes can be sorted depending on the different colors, as this become a key aspect of creating recycled fabrics as we go forward. The sorting process also enables livelihoods for waste workers, who are a key asset in India's circular landscape. The next step was to create fabric to fiber. This happened at an industrial facility for shredding. The initial plan was to implement a small shredder within the partner craft cluster so that we could do it as a decentralized approach. But because of limited availability, budget constraints, and time restrictions, this did not happen, and we had to rely on a larger industrial shredder. We had some fiber loss from this large shredder, and resulting in an estimated loss of 60 to 70%. And 14 kg of recycled fiber was finally produced to work with to create the final samples. We had a challenge with the colored waste. There was some damage done due to it from weather conditions, and the shredded material was discarded, which, because of the project timelines, we have not been able to create colored swatches of this. But going forward, it is a viable option. We've also had some laboratory tests done to compare it with virgin cotton in fiber fineness, moisture content, fiber strength, and color grade. We found that staple length and uniformity index showed some room for improvement, but overall the swatches have been a fantastic start to the project.
So moving on to the next stage of the project, I am standing in for Khamir, for Guthat, who is the ex-director now of Khamir, but he very kindly facilitated this process of turning the fibre into yarn. So these are some photos from the process of firstly investigating the fibre upon arrival and the initial spinning tests on the ground. The tool that you can see in some of the photos are, so on the right is a hand carding tool, which is used to kind of get the fibers in one direction, and also for smoothness and ease for spinning later on in the process. And the tool that is used to turn the fiber into yarn that is shown in the photos is called the peti cherka, which is a portable spinning wheel. And you can see that the ladies are using that in the village, and then on the ground, the spinning tests that were conducted at Khamir itself. So the fibre to yarn process consisted of, originally we had planned to actually card and turn these fibres into slivers before spinning, but our initial experiments proved that we could eliminate this from the process and go straight from the fibre into the spinning. So this was more efficient, and it also prevented further fibre loss. Though less seamless as compared to spinning native cotton, which is the usual cotton that the expert spinners here spin for Khamir, it proved to be successful and produced a usable yarn. In the project, we engaged 8 expert spinners from a neighbouring village called Arikana, where the spinners engaged in spinning 100% recycled yarn for the first time, which we found really exciting. And in total, there was 11 kg of recycled hand-spun yarn that was produced as an outcome of the project. And we did conduct some experiments where we tried to mix the recycled fibres with the virgin indigenous cotton, but this also proved to be a challenge. And we assume that this could be because of the short staple length of the fibres caused by the kind of aggressive shredding technique. So we'd like to further develop this and see if we can improve the quality and the staple length of the yarn. And the spinners' feedback was that although they were initially quite hesitant to work with the recycled cotton, they quickly adapted their techniques and successfully spun the recycled yarn, demonstrating their flexibility and their skill. So here's the spinners chatting and gathering together to do the original tests of the spinning of the recycled cotton, and then later with the 11 kg of recycled cotton yarn. So from the yarn, we moved on to turning this yarn into hand-woven fabric through a process of turning the yarn into hanks, a starching process and a sizing process before being put on the loom for weaving. So the initial step was that a weaving plan was created in collaboration between Khadi London and Khamir, and this was kind of experimenting with different compositions of recycled and virgin native cotton, including plies and patterns. This was to demonstrate their suitability for different applications, such as homeware and apparel, which we'd like to delve further into down the line. In total, there were 12 fabric samples created, and they ranged between 2 to 6 meters as the original kind of samples to test the quality of the fabrics and how they compared as to other cotton fabrics. Local weavers and traditional pit looms were a key point, a key aspect in this part of the process. So we engaged with 4 local weavers that were well versed in weaving with peti cherka yarn, which is a hand-spun yarn from indigenous cotton, and desi un, which is native wool yarn that is used by weavers in the region. So these yarns have similar qualities to the recycled cotton yarn. So we engaged these weavers specifically in the project for their expertise and knowledge. And the fabric was woven on traditional pit looms. So on average, weaving with a virgin cotton warp and recycled weft took 3 to 4 days, while our tests of using 100% recycled fibre in both the warp and the weft extended this to 6 to 7 days. And the final sample, so 6 fabric samples were created and a total of 14.5 meters as the initial tests of the Circular Khadi fabric, and the resulting fabrics were of a quality comparable to Khamir's hand-spun, hand-woven fabric, which is sold internationally to designers and makers. So these are snapshots of a few of our tests. The first, for example, is a Kala cotton warp and a recycled cotton weft, and it is a plain weave and a 1x2 ply. So the premise of these tests was really to test different kind of weights and qualities of fabric. So we aim to achieve kind of a lightweight, a midweight, and a heavyweight fabric so that they could be used across different applications, as I mentioned, through apparel to homeware. And so these kind of illustrate our different tests from colors and designs to weave patterns as well. So in the third photo, you can see that we incorporated black dyed Kala cotton in the warp and recycled cotton in the weft. And the final sample shows a warp of Kala cotton and a weft of recycled cotton, but done in a herringbone weave. This was the main fabric that we really tried to achieve in the project, which was a complete 100% recycled fabric. So both warp and weft consisted of recycled yarn. And it had a really beautiful quality, very slubby and quite similar to that of linen. And also, as mentioned, the Peti Churka fabric that Khamir produce and sell across the world. And yeah, it just kind of speaks for itself. We feel it has, of course, a lot of room for improvement, but we love the kind of handmade feel, and that it does differ from the native cotton fabric, because you can see that there are more slubs involved. So this kind of contributes to the story of the Circular Khadi. Our key outcomes from the project were circularity meets tradition, so the establishment of a circular system within a decentralized craft cluster by sourcing and recycling natural fiber textiles from various waste streams. The production of Circular Khadi fabric and yarn, so the development of 11 kg of Circular Khadi yarn and 14.5 meters of fabric and 6 fabric samples. Knowledge building, so we mapped an existing and developed processes and resources and identified areas for future development to build a replicable, decentralized, circular system across different fibers and geographies, including sorting guidelines, which provides a standardized framework for waste segregation. Dissemination, so including this webinar and an exhibition that will take place in Delhi, and exposure to approximately 100 people through this webinar, reaching academic, industry and craft audiences in the UK, India and globally, with the recording shared for broader engagement. So this will be recorded and shared on our social media channels, so please do share and disseminate across your networks. And a written report and documentation. So a formal report documenting the overall project, its outcomes and recommendations for future work, alongside a comprehensive visual and written record of the project's progression, capturing key learnings, challenges and opportunities for future development. Handing over to Jo.
Turn on my audio will help, won't it? For sure. I wanted to say to people as well, if you want to put any questions in the chat, we've got 15 to 20 minutes scheduled in at the end for any questions, and we know we're rattling through the project details here, because we wanted to make sure that you heard what we've been up to, but we're really happy to take questions at the end. A key part of the project was obviously the impacts, and it's important to all of us, I think, here. So enhancing rural livelihoods was a key one. So we directly engaged and supported 42 workers, which included waste sorters, spinners and weavers, generating sustainable employment opportunities, which we hope we can grow and replicate. A key one, of course, is reduction in textile waste. We all know the numbers about how much textile waste there is in the world, and if we can build a system where the natural fibre waste can be recycled in ways that is actually contributing to local economies and communities, then that was a key impact that we have and hope to grow. Knowledge transfer and capacity building so that we can strengthen the expertise in sorting, spinning and weaving by extending that into recycled fibres, and developing this replicable framework so that we can integrate circular economy principles into traditional communities. And that doesn't necessarily just sit with cotton, that can move into wool, linen, nettle and hemp in the UK, and basically there's global opportunities there. And broader knowledge building. Speaking for myself, I mean, I've certainly learned a huge amount during this project, and I think all the partners have, not only from our partner organizations, but also dealing with the communities, working with the communities who've been doing this for generations and generations, and sharing it hopefully with you through this webinar, through the recording, and through all of the project information and documentation that we've been creating as part of this. Of course, it's not always plain sailing. We have had some challenges. A key one, and we'd appreciate any outreach from people on this call who may be able to help us with this one. Due to the time and financial constraints of this particular British Council funded project, we couldn't access a small scale shredder to put in the cluster, in the craft cluster, which we had planned to do, so that we ended up using an industrial shredder in Delhi, which was a great learning process for us, but it did have minimum order quantities of 100 kg per run, so that removed our ability to create a diverse color palette because we were sorting them into different colors, and it also meant that there was no sort of expert craft person to oversee that, to see when we'd reached the right level, different levels of shredding for the fiber levels that we would want. So that was definitely a challenge. One of those life things, the coloured waste was damaged due to weather exposure, unfortunately, bad weather in Delhi, and had to be discarded by the shredding facility. And because we had to, as I said, we had no oversight from a craft person looking at the fibre length, we feel that we may have aggressively shredded that fibre, and it would be wonderful to do some future tests with different levels of shredding to see what we can actually produce with and get less waste from that, because unfortunately the aggressive shredding meant that 60 to 70% of that fibre was lost into dust, and we had anticipated it to be a lot less than that, but we think that we probably didn't need to shred it quite that much. Another challenge was fibre blending, looking at different ways that we can blend indigenous cotton, virgin cotton with the recycled. Some of the tests we did weren't successful for a variety of factors, including staple length and high moisture content, but we obviously did manage to do different warps and wefts so that we did get some fantastic solutions there. Lots of different future directions. I think as we go through the project, we've been documenting different things we could do to take this forward, and we're already looking into opportunities for doing that. One key one, of course, is decentralising the whole process, so being able to access or even create a small shredding machine that could be placed within local clusters, which would not only reduce the carbon emissions, making the different fibres and fabrics move backwards and forwards from different locations, but also allowing that local management, that local oversight, and by reducing shredding cycles to get longer staple fibres, we would hope, and have less material loss, which would lead to better blending and improved yarn and fabric quality. Again, we would want to have more work on how we could improve our yarn quality and different blending, so that we have different varieties of fabrics coming out of this project, including blends such as wool, cotton and silk, and then leading to improving the staple lengths and the yarn quality. We would want to scale this, and we don't mean necessarily scale in the more mainstream sense of making it bigger and better, but actually replicating the models across different craft clusters and different fibres, integrating the waste worker networks, and basically we're aiming to produce a model that can be used for the benefits of local craft communities everywhere if it works. and upskilling rural workers by conducting capacity building workshops for the waste sorters, spinners, weavers in circular production techniques that enhances their technical capabilities and gives even more skills for them working within their craft clusters. And of course, a key one is developing those high quality products. So this is not just a development management opportunity. This is something to create for the fashion industry moving forward and for designers in apparel and homeware. So there's an alternative there, a recycled alternative for them and their clients and markets. So finally, want to say all of our thank yous. Thank you to the British Council for the funding and to the UAL FTTI for the management of the New Landscapes project and providing us with mentoring going along. Want to thank most of all, I suppose, our on-the-ground team of sorters, spinners, weavers and facilitators, because you are the guys with all of the heritage knowledge and experience that you're sharing, and also to all of you and our wider network for all of your support in this project. It's been amazing, and I personally feel really proud of what we've achieved and can see some really fantastic opportunities of where this is going in the future. So thank you for being here. So we've now got quite a lot of time for questions, if anybody has got any questions, and I think hopefully the others will agree. Happy for you to come off of mute and ask your questions live to the team. We're all here. Asha is here. Asha, do you want to come off mute and ask a question?
Yes, I was wondering, after shredding, how does it turn into, I can understand it won't become like a cotton slivers. How does it turn into a material that can be spun? What other process is being done? I don't know.
Gusset, do you want to take that one?
This is related to shredding, so maybe Kanika can explain. She's asking how it is turned into the cotton sliver.
Yeah. How?
I'll try to give the answer. So in the shredding, because we wanted to it should become as stable as possible, the fibers, so that the fluff, so that it becomes fiber. We did the turning 2-3 times and used a particular 3 times we did it to get that kind of fluff, which would make it more viable to make it into a yarn.
And also, how much does it add to the cost of the whole process and final product? Like, I can understand people may collect the waste, but you have to pay to them. Then shredding, turning into kind of spinnable material, then spinners, weavers, dyers. So is it going to be more costly?
It's a very good question, Asha. I mean, I think one of the issues is you'd be paying the farmers for the native cotton, so paying for the waste, it would be the same.
Yeah.
And not in terms of money, but you've still got that economic model of cost. But I think the costs for the spinners and the weavers and all of that will be the same as for Khadi anyway. So it's very hard to know until we start going into a production system, but I would have thought that it should be comparable to native Khadi costs. I don't know if you've got anything to add there, Gattet.
Yeah, I think we need to get into more robust production system before arriving at the question of cost. This is things were done at an experimental level just to check that whether this kind of value addition at every level is possible or not.
Is that okay, Asha?
Yeah, I mean, first 3 decades of my life, I wore nothing but Khadi and reuse, recycle, repair. So I don't remember it being wasted as much. So why there is so much waste now? I don't know.
Maybe it's interesting to address that point then, Asha, of where the waste came from. Like, I know we touched on it in the presentation, but from my understanding from the project is that it comes from a variety of waste streams within this one ecosystem in Gujarat. And for this pilot, we focused on Khamir's kind of in-house production. So that was offcuts from their in-house stitching unit, and kind of in their stock room of dye misprints and dye issues. So that's where it was collected from, but there's no reason going forward why, and we did talk about it for this project, but time and budget, but there's no reason why going forward we couldn't then start including neighboring craft clusters and kind of buying their waste for I mean, it's better for it to be turned into material, like I was saying, value addition rather than it being completely wasted. But another point to add is that, as you're saying also, Ashaji, that your Khadi saris were kind of mended and reused until you couldn't use them anymore. Khamir do upcycle some of their waste products into new clothing, new homeware, etc. So they do have kind of inbuilt production to use that waste that gets produced in their unit.
Yeah, that makes sense. Thank you.
I'll just take one of the questions from the chat. It's Alice's question. Alice, do you want to come off of mute and ask it, or do you want me to read it out for you? I assume you're going to come out come live. No. Yeah.
Yeah, hi, sorry, Joe, technical. I'm not so used to Zoom, so excuse my delay. Yes, I just wondered, you touched on the fabric being used for a fashion and homewares application, and since this is such an exciting fabric, and congratulations on all the work with it, I wondered if you have any ideas for next steps with that. I imagine you might already have some existing fabrics. Are there any intentions to apply it to existing products, or could there be any collaborations where you start to see that fabric in a product as a sort of route to market with it? Just wondered what your plans are with that.
First of all, I want to say a big thank you to Alice, who you're now seeing, because Alice has been our mentor through the UAL program. So she's helped us all the way through this with making sure the project was running to smoothness, and especially her great insights into the weaving side of things in the weaving plan. So thank you to Alice for that. To answer the question, I think we've talked about it quite a lot. We did originally plan to have product prototypes created through this project, but Alice very wisely, Alice advised us to stick to the fabric for this stage and not be too ambitious. I think I mean, where does it come from? The brand that I run, that is a brand that will look at it. We've talked about integrating it into product sets with Sanja Stories as well, which we're both Khadi London and Where Does It Come From are involved with. Ashton is actually a designer by trade, so we're going to be looking at prototypes there. We haven't signed up particularly with anybody yet, and if anybody wants to talk to us about collaborating on product development, we'd be very happy to talk to you. So yeah, I think it's kind of wait and see. We're very excited about the possibilities, but we haven't jumped in any particular direction as yet.
No, that makes sense. And yes, I definitely did suggest to you that you focused on the fabric for the length of the project, and I think that is still good that you still focusing on the quality of it. But yeah, good luck, and I think to sort of start looking into those avenues will be really exciting as you start to continue R&D into other fiber types and things, but having those conversations would be exciting.
Thank you, Alice. We've got a question from, is it Rebecca, or you have to correct me if I've got your name wrong?
Rebecca. Hi, Rebecca.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for a really interesting webinar. I have some questions about the solidity of fiber and the resulting fabric, because normally when you recycle fibers, they get shorter. And if the cotton fibers from the beginning were short, which they might be, they get even shorter. So that's a question if you have tested, because you say you compared it to normal Khadi fabrics. Since I'm not familiar with it, I can't judge it. But then one more thing, I recommend to try maybe to twin the recycled fiber with a virgin fiber yarn, but in yarn as 2 yarns, so you get a 2-ply, in order to get stronger and maybe more heavy fabrics, because that would help strengthen the lifetime of the fabric. Because I think it's very important that the lifetime, that it doesn't break too easily, or, people get disappointed with the quality and so on and so on. Thank you.
Yes, we did conduct some fabric tests, actually. The original plan, thank you, Vibeke, for your question and your suggestion to work with plies. So our original plan was to actually test only the fabric, and as the project progressed, we decided to test at each stage, so at fiber stage, at yarn stage, and at fabric stage. We got a bit short for time, so we only managed to do the fiber testing. But to pick up on your point of, we started with short staple fiber, you're absolutely right, because native cotton does have a shorter fiber, a shorter staple length than regular cotton. And the recycled cotton, so in our tests from the test results from the lab, the native cotton had a staple length of 24 and on average, and the recycled cotton tested at 19. So actually there wasn't such a huge difference. It was smaller than we had expected, the difference in staple length. But as Joe, to pick up on Joe's point from earlier, we would like to, one of our future development key areas is the development of a small scale shredder, because we think that having this kind of control over experimentation, putting the fabric through the shredder less times than we did could result in longer staple fiber, and this would be easier to work with at the spinning stages and also for fiber blending as well. So we did do some tests, as I mentioned in the presentation, of blending the native cotton with the recycled cotton in both a carding process and through the spinning process as well. But it proved to be quite challenging. I don't know if Gatitbhai, you'd like to pick up on the challenges of blending the fibers together.
Both the fibers were not juggling very well. The upcycled shredded fiber and the native virgin cotton fibers. So it was not getting into the carded sort of form of cotton, which the spinners can easily spin. So we require a little more experiment on that side. But in the
technology.
But in the weaving, I'll pick up on his point until he's back. But I think what he was going to say is that in the weaving, we did some experiments with mixing the Kala virgin cotton with the recycled cotton yarn. So Alice, with her expertise in weaving, she suggested that we work with, as I said, one of the main fabric samples was really testing that recycled by recycled in the warp and weft, but alongside of that, to kind of enhance the resilience and the durability of the fabric, we tested a Kala cotton, virgin cotton warp, and a recycled cotton weft. And this is something we would love to continue experimenting with in the fiber blending and also in the weaving process itself. So fiber blending, but also kind of the composition of fabrics in the weaving process. And yeah, to pick up on another point in our presentation, we'd love to, one of our next steps is expanding to new fibres and geographies. So we have partners in the UK who work with nettle and hemp fibre. And in India, we have amazing partners who work with Desi Un, which is the native wool of India, which, yeah, different breeds across India have different qualities of wool, but the native wool and native cotton breeds as well. So there's so many experiments and improvements that can be made to the both aesthetic and durability and resilience of the yarn in the kind of fibre blending and the composition as well.
Thanks, Ashna. The next question from Charles Ross. Charles, do you want to come live and to ask your question?
Yeah, no worries. I'm just looking at process. The big flaw with most processes over here in Europe is how much waste there is. So it's contamination from dyes, contamination from mixed fibers, contamination from dirt on post-consumers. What's the magic number?
In terms of waste?
Yeah, what's the percentage that you can deal with? Is it 5% contamination?
I don't, at the moment, we must admit we focused this one purely on natural fibres and we knew the source of the waste. So I don't know, actually, Anita, do you want to talk a little bit about some of the ways of doing waste sorting that we would look at for future projects?
Yes, sure. So though we did get colored waste from Khamir, we decided on the advice also of the shredder, our technician, that we should not mix all the fibers, because then the fluff that will come out will not be strong, because many materials were very weak. The small pieces, shredded material which came. So we decided to focus only on white cotton. And then together, we decided on only a certain waste. That is why, though we got 100+ kg from Khamir, we decided to use, I don't remember the exact number, but much lesser number we used, because in our sorting when we did our sorting training program, then quite a lot of waste had to be rejected by the sorting team.
Yeah, so we were quite specific on this particular project, Charles, but I mean, I think it's certainly something that in the future we would love to look into more about how we can reduce the waste of the waste, if you see what I mean. And also, I know there's machinery and things that people now have that you can put mixed fibers on perhaps and work out different how much polyester is in them. I mean, we've made the decision we don't want to really look at synthetics at this time. We're focusing on the natural fibers for sure.
Joe, I take on board it's a rather negative question, but you've got things like trims and zips. The main thing is that the project needs to be congratulated for getting off its butt and starting. And so many people talk about this is the future. You guys are doing it, so you deserve congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, I think the accessories part, yeah, that's another key one, because we worked with post-production waste. That wasn't so much of an issue, but yeah, there will obviously be the zips, buttons, etc. going forward. But thank you for your positive feedback for sure. Right, Swapnaja, you did have your hand up. You've put it down. Is that because your question's been answered?
Hi, Joe. Hello, everyone.
Hi, Swapnaja.
Can you? Yeah, hi. First of all, congratulations to the whole team involved, and you have done a fantastic job. I have a question. Joe, you mentioned about the industrial shredder. Can I get any more details about it, like technical details, like what type of machine was used and maybe the model number of that machine?
Yeah, of course. I'm sure we can get you that, Swapnaja. And any help that you can give on the small scale shredder production would be really, really helpful. Swapnaja has been part of our team for a long time, so she's probably got some good insights. But yeah, I mean, we need the next stage of the project. We definitely want to pull together the shredding knowledge, which I think is probably fair to say is something that we don't have a huge amount of knowledge within the team at most. Anita's got the most, but I have zero. So it's growing. So thank you, Swapnaja. We're definitely
interesting area. Maybe Swapnaja, you have experience of kind of small scale machinery as well through Gram Sevamundal, but it seems like sorry, that's the phone, but it seems like a growing area of development. I think like the production or the development of small scale machinery for these decentralized textile ecosystems. Agathit Bhai, I know maybe he would like to talk a little bit about the carding machine that was developed for Desi Un, which is an interesting area of development that we might be able to learn from.
In all these areas, the bigger technologies are available. Shredding is being performed in the mainstream industry also. Like weaving and spinning also, we have the bigger technologies are available. But how to sort of make these technologies work at the decentralized level, that is the real key. And also, where you are having a hand element, then you are also having a lot of versatility of engaging with different kind of fibers. So when you deal with machine, then you have to have a scale and sort of standard production and everything. But when you are dealing with processes like hand spinning, there is a lot of possibility of dealing with various kind of short staple, upcycled, wool, cotton, all that kind of possibilities are getting open up.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Swapnaja and Arnav. I can see you hiding there behind your mum. Another question from Kishore Shah, who's the founder of Khadi London. Do you want to come on live, Kishore, and ask your question?
Yeah, I think, sorry, it's about further development of the technology, because you talked about it already. Khadi was also talk about, but is that going to be a major focus going forward? Especially shredders, but also different spinning technologies, weaving technologies, and what Charles brought out. Can you look at technologies for sorting out different fibers from post-consumer waste?
All I would say is that yes. Yes, we want that's what we want to do. It'll be about funding will direct where we are, with what we do next, where we get the funding from. We know the directions we want to take it in, which we've outlined to you. I'm sure there'll be new possibilities, new directions as we learn, but I think all the things you said we want to do, yes. Anyone else want to add anything?
And also in terms of solar energy.
Yeah. Yes.
It's between manual and no conventional electricity. So
I mean, I know Shalini's on this call as well, and we've been talking about different small scale technologies and how we can do that. There's anything you want to add to that, Shalini, about the small scale technologies?
Apart from the technologies, the core focus is also to create livelihood.
Yes.
So technology should enable the creating more livelihood. That should be the focus.
Yeah, that's why I use the word.
Sometimes technology can take away livelihoods also.
No, I think that's why I used the word appropriate in my question.
Yeah.
So you do something which is appropriate for decentralization, for livelihoods, for autonomy.
Yeah.
I think when it gets to maybe proving the case as a business case and scaling up production, it might be interesting to think about how we can adjust the fibers or adjust the machinery that is available at a decentralized level, like the Umber Cherka, for example, to kind of accommodate for the recycled fiber. That would be an interesting point of development.
Yeah, I think we were talking a lot about the fact that we had to use the industrial shredder in Delhi, which was a great learning point. So it was good that we did it that way. But as Gatit said, we want things to be cluster based. We want things to be enhancing the livelihoods and the skill sets within those clusters, not placement. I mean, I've had a lot of conversations lately with businesses who've looked at using recycled cotton in a more mainstream environment, and that's always focused on the large scale machinery, how they can scale up, how they can work with the different fibers. And one of the reasons that they haven't necessarily been successful is because of the fibers being so short. Whereas we've really learned that using these traditional heritage processes, the skill and the knowledge and the intelligence of the spinners in particular, they've been able to take those short fibers, and they've been able to adapt their knowledge and their small scale equipment to work with them, which using mainstream and mechanized processes hasn't so far worked, you know. So I think it is a real positive thing about coming out of this project. Got another question.
Vibeka's got another question.
Yeah, it's a little bit of a comment. Maybe you should, or maybe you have been looking at many of the projects that's already done within this field, and with small machinery. There has been or a whole movement, I would say, about mini mills, but that's, you know, maybe breaking with your local craft principles. But within that community, you might be able to find smaller things for shedding and knowledge, you know, from other projects. Right now I don't have it on the top of my head, but I know that Europe, the EU Union have done quite a number. I definitely think you should stick to the natural fiber and don't go into the mixed fiber, because I mean the big multinational fashion brands, they are all into that, and there's no need for going there. So I definitely think use the craft, and I recommend maybe, Asna, you know Catherine Hall at Design School Colin, or she came after you left, I think, but she's a postdoc. Yeah, she's a postdoc, and she's especially interested in spinning and fibers, and has I don't remember the project she's involved with at the moment, but she could be also a good contact for you. She has been into letting the students build their own spinning wheel, and, you know, things like, I just think she could be useful to you. And you can always get back to me, Asna, with maybe, you know, if you need some more names.
Okay, thank you so much, Vibeka.
Are there any more questions? I think I've done all the ones in the chat now, but if anyone would like to come off mute and ask a question, we've got about 5 minutes left. So, oh, Isabella's put a question in. Isabella, do you want to come on to the, take your mute off and stuff?
Hello. Thanks so much. It's really interesting. Excuse my ignorance, Joe, when you just said about large scale recycling not being successful because they can't sort of adapt to the idiosyncrasies of recycled fibre, does that mean then that when we see labels for recycled materials that that's entirely false, or is it just that they're using such a small amount that it's negligible but enough for them to kind of mark it in a greenwashing?
To be honest, I couldn't claim, I wouldn't like to put myself forward as someone that could claim that all recycled fabric hasn't been successful. But what I mean is it's very challenging, and certainly ones that I've spoken to have told me, I'm not going to name names, but they've told me that they abandoned their recycled cotton because it wasn't making sense financially. It was so much effort to try to do that using the mainstream machinery. I think, as Vibeka says, the recycled polyester seems to be the main focus. You don't see recycled cotton quite so much as recycled synthetic fibers, but I know that Vadis Cotton, for example, they're doing some fantastic work adding recycled t-shirt fabric back into their t-shirts. I think they've now got one that's 60% recycled cotton, so there has been some success there. So I think it's probably a growing area, Isabella, and I certainly wouldn't put myself forward as I know absolutely everything and that's going on there.
Thank you. Are you finding that people are sharing information in terms of even slightly larger scale systems are kind of sharing what they're doing in order for smaller scale systems to learn from their mistakes, or is it quite a closed book?
I haven't had any problem when I've spoken to people about it, but it tends to have been at events and networking as opposed to ringing them up and, you know, asking for lots of information. So I think it's I haven't found that anybody doesn't want to share, because we're all really interested in the same things, aren't we?
Yeah, I think the open source nature of a lot of the small scale equipment that's coming through is one of the best parts of it. Thank you, Jo.
Pleasure. Any other questions? We've got 1 minute left. One more question.
Vibeke says, often the recycling of cotton will be turned into pulp for regenerated cellulose, which is now commercially available.
Thank you, Vibeke. Yeah, and I think the other thing, you often see recycled cotton used in paper as and make paper, business cards and things like that. So that's a really good use for it too.
No question, but an offer. If Khadi London wants to try to learn to spin that material, send me to Kutch to get it by. Warning, there is a chance I may never come back.
Well, that's not
I'll come with you, Ashaji.
I'll come with you as well. Gatik, you might have to give a workshop to all of us from the UK to teach us how to. No, that's it, an online recycled spinning.
Definitely we can do that. And it will be a treat for Asaji to come back to her meeting place also.
We all love it. But yes, Asha, you're from that area originally, aren't you, Asha? So
yes, she's from Bhuj, Kutch.
So I think it's 1 o'clock now, so we've been an hour as we promised. So unless there's anything else, I personally wanted to say a really big thank you to everyone for coming along. We've got a recording of this that will be available to anybody who wants it and wants to share it. And we've finished this round of funding now, so we're available for any questions. If anyone wants to contact us, ask us what we're doing, and we would love to talk about it until you're bored out of your heads. Anything else from the rest of the team?
No, just thank you very much for everybody for joining.
Thank you for joining.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. I'll close this now then. Thank you again. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Thank you.